You're listening to Archaeopolitics, a MuggleDit.com podcast about politics in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. I'm your host, Adri, a recovering English major, and with me today I have the lovely Aureo Potts from the Speak Beastie podcast. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I am so excited to have you on. You don't even know.
And we're international.
And now we're international. How's it going over in Germany?
Very cold. I mean, it's November, so I suppose it's officially going into winter. So yeah, it's cold.
Oh yeah. It is, I think it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit here in San Antonio today. So
Oh, okay.
not too cold, but like cold enough for like my tropical vibe sensibility.
Yeah. I think it's like 35 Fahrenheit here, so.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I'd be freezing. I grew up in Puerto Rico where like cold is 70 degrees, you know? Or like 65.
Oh, yeah, it's different for me. I grew up in the Southwest where there's like the mountains and stuff, so we get snow. So yeah, I'm used to cold and snow.
I think the first time I saw real snow, I was maybe 13.
Oh,
and we
wow.
were in North Carolina.
That is so unreal for me because you just grow up with it.
It would like be 65 degrees and like foggy in the mornings. I'd be freezing, and my mom would be like, you couldn't be able to move to the States if this is freezing for you.
Yep. Well, I suppose it depends where, but
well, yes. And I mean, I moved to Texas, which like politically not the best, but weather-wise, not the worst.
That is true. And it's changing in Texas, isn't it? There's like a blue wave thing going on.
Oh, I am so excited about this. I'm like, yes, bring it. Bring it. Also, I live in San Antonio. So like the bigger cities in Texas, like El Paso, San Antonio, parts of Dallas and Houston are pretty much blue.
Okay.
Dallas is more Republican because that's where a lot of people with money are, obviously. But San Antonio's pretty blue, and so is El Paso, where I used to live before.
Yeah. I mean, El Paso is where Beto O'Rourke is from, isn't it?
Yes, and I saw him like speak at like this protest before he was even a candidate for Senate, let alone for president. And even at that protest that I went to in El Paso, I looked at my husband and I said, you know, he's gearing up for being a candidate for the Senate. And he was like, he'd be stupid to do that. And I was like, he's gonna do it. I can tell.
Yep. I remember I was the first time I was in the US was in 2008, and I was in New York City in front of the Rockefeller Center the night of the election when Obama got elected. And we were standing there, and obviously none of us did like vote or anything. We were just looking. But we were talking with people around us, and everyone was like cheering every time Obama got like more votes, and like they pulled up the window cleaning thing. And then when there was a guy next to us, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm from Texas. I didn't vote because it's pointless Republican anyway." So,
oh my God. I just feel like maybe like, and the whole thing in Texas is, funnily enough, that we have seen, so people usually think, oh, it's the native Texans who are Republican. And honestly, it's the people moving from California to Texas that are Republican. And those are the most Republican votes. People who are from Texas are pretty evenly split between Democrat and Republican.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting too, because I for sure was buying into that myth, right?
Yeah.
I was like, it's like the native Texans who are so conservative. And then like that, I saw that like that study or that, that poll. And I was like, oh, when they say like liberal Californians are moving to Texas, it's not true.
Huh. Because I mean,
it's actually conservative Californians moving to Texas.
Because I mean, California is like the state that everyone's always like those are the liberal people from the US. That's at least what we hear over here. So
Yeah, I know, and it's not true. I think Orange County is pretty Republican, um, which is like obviously where a lot of the wealth is, non Hollywood, you know.
so essentially, all wealthy people are Republicans.
I mean, I wouldn't want to
I mean, not
say it
all.
like that, but like a certain type of wealthy person,
Yeah,
like a certain type of wealthy person who believes that they have the same opportunities as everyone else and everyone else can attain their level of wealth. They're just not working hard enough, I think, is kind of the mentality of this.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense because Republicans are doing the most for keeping the money with the rich, like making it easy to remain rich, lowering taxes all the time. So
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond that, right? Because we're getting really deep into this, and I love this. I always thought because I'm a kind of an outsider. So, like when you said you were at the U.S. when Obama was elected, and you were kind of observing things.
yeah,
Even though I was born an American citizen, because I grew up in Puerto Rico, which is a colony, I oftentimes feel like an observer as well,
yeah.
even though I can vote and like all these other things, right? But I grew up Roman Catholic, and Catholicism in the Caribbean is very different from Catholicism in the mainland too.
Okay.
It's not oriented towards how much money you can give. It's not oriented, around like money and power. It's more oriented into like acts of service and being good to your neighbor, which is like super, what I think of Christian, right? Like this is what Jesus would want us to do, not
Yeah.
like anyone else. So even going to like the times I've gone to mass here, it's not the same because it's kind of oriented around how much money you can give. And I've been to other churches because my in-laws are not Catholic and they go to a non-denominational church, and it's all about the prosperity gospel. Do you know what that is?
I think I've heard it before. Isn't that?
Yeah, so like that's the idea of God wants you to be rich, and
Oh,
God will provide you with riches in this earth, not in the afterlife, in this earth, if you believe in Him and if you are deserving. So only deserving people are given riches by God.
huh. I mean,
So if
I'm
so,
reminded a lot of how Protestant church was founded because Martin Luther was kind of like, this shouldn't be about the money and putting all the money into the
exactly, yeah.
Vatican.
So we turned a hard left on this. Or a hard right, I would say. It's all about like how deserving people get riches, and how if you don't have riches, it's because you don't believe enough in God, or you don't want it enough, or you don't. It's this idea of like almost like the American dream manifested into religion, right? Like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but God will help you do it. And that is used in a lot of these churches to say you have to give everything you have to us because God will make sure that you're taken care of.
How big is the impact of religion still in the US? Because
I
have
yeah,
you
I think
separated state and religion? Yes, you
I
did. Huh?
mean on paper.
Yeah.
I always thought it was separated as a, when I didn't live in the mainland, right? But
Yeah.
then when I did move to the mainland, and granted, I've, lived in New Mexico and Texas, that's it. But also, I've kind of been observing a lot of like these, and I know it's hard sometimes to understand like what some quite liberal coworkers that I have, or like at least not Republican leaning, they'll say like, "Oh, we need to put prayer back in school," and I'm like, "No."
Because that's the impression I have from like we've separated church and state, but also in general, like I think all across Europe, but definitely in Germany, people
Uh-huh.
are just moving away from church and religion in general. So like in Germany, all our like public holidays are usually based on religion. But if you go out in the street and ask like 10 people why this is now the holiday we're celebrating, I guarantee you 9 out of them would not know why we're celebrating the holiday. It's just like, yeah, it's a day off.
Of course.
I
But
mean,
see,
aside from Christmas,
and
because
that's the
everyone knows
thing. And
Christmas,
then
but
I don't know, like especially when there's like mass shooters and like in schools and stuff, they'll say like the first thing instead of like being we need to regulate, you know, weapons, which would be the sensible thing to do. I hear a lot of the, well, that's what
yeah.
happened when we took God out of the schools. And I was like, I don't think that's that. I think it has more to do with like, you know, white supremacy, toxic
Oh,
masculinity,
wow.
and ready access to weapons. Off the top of my head, these are 3 reasons.
I'm also always shocked because like there's like at least 30 other countries that the US can compare with, like from like kind of Western standardization that don't have the problems with like gun violence. So why don't you look and see what they like those countries do and be like, okay, there's
um,
no like easy
that would
access to weapons,
make
so maybe
too
that's
much
the
sense.
solution. Oh well. Can I say I also love that we've gone like 2 sentences
But you
in the
know
dark
what?
and
This
we've
can be
got
a
just
very
completely
special
straight off
episode of
topic.
Archaeopolitics. I mean,
It's
we'll
all
get
about
there eventually.
politics. None of it is about Harry Potter.
As someone who is very aware of colonialism and the island, it's kind of a trip. Once I realized the thing about colonialism and like this American culture that I was trying to embrace as I was kind of like becoming a teenager. Um, it, I mean, I'm 33, so I'm quite old. So I remember when the internet first became the thing that we used to connect to the rest of the world. And one of the things that my friends and I used to do when we were 13, 14, and
Yeah.
15 was to kind of like try to meet people from around the world, especially the US, and kind of immerse ourselves in the pop culture of the time. You know, we had NSYNC, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, all these like poppy, you know, bands. And
Yeah.
you kind of lived a double life, right? Like you had like your Puerto Rican culture that you were trying to navigate, but you were also trying to navigate online culture when before it was like a real thing, you know? Um, so you kind of already felt in between two worlds, and then you add colonialism to that. So that's, you know, interesting. And then I moved to the mainland. I'm like, oh, I thought I was prepared to
Yeah.
live in the mainland. Clearly I am not. Um, the internet did not prepare me for this. And damn you, internet! I thought you were supposed to prepare me
Damn
for
you,
life.
internet.
So I moved to New Mexico in
Oh man.
2010 to do my master's degree, and never, you know, never truly left because like my idea was to go back to the island and do law school and do other things, but that didn't happen because I met my husband and like all these other things. I decided I didn't need more student loans, you know, life. um, but
Yeah.
I'm suddenly always like I'm between being an outsider and an insider still at all times, and that's just a very, I don't know, it's a weird place to be because I'm never quite in the group, but also I am not out of it either.
Yeah. I can partly relate to that. Wonderful. I'm now very much
Of
in the
course.
internet culture because I work for MuggleNet, and those are like 90% Americans. I'm the only one from Germany, and we have those like chats in like our Facebook groups. There's like Americans will be like, Brits, you are doing this. Why are we doing this? We don't get it. And then the Brits will be, well, what you
Oh
do
boy.
is weird. And then it just kind of escalates from there. And then we just be like, your country is so weird. No, your country is so weird. And then, um, aside from that, it's also like I don't have friends here in Germany that
Oh,
are interested in Harry Potter as much as all my online
same,
friends are,
same.
which is why I
Hard
have
same.
all of my online friends. Then I'm on the verge of moving to the UK, but I've also lived in New
Hmm.
Zealand before, so I've definitely been an outsider in a country. And also, within Germany, I'm thinking it's probably the same as in the US. We have states, and
Hmm.
states have kind of like their own like identity. So I'm from the Southwest, so I'm Swabian is what I'm called, and Swabians are kind of like the super hardworking, no slacker
Hmm.
kind of stereotype. We never spend money on fun stuff,
Well,
which isn't
as with
true,
every
but
stereotype,
I
there's
mean, there's
always a
some
grain of
truth in it.
truth.
um, but I've moved within Germany. I've been living here for 3 years now in a different state, which is kind of more the party slacking state because there's carnival and stuff is really big here. So I'm even an outsider within Germany because I'm like people be like sometimes like I'll go home to my parents. I like fall back into my local accent, but then I come up here again and in German, there's this thing that we call High
Oh,
German. It's essentially the way you're supposed to speak German. It's not like in the English language where every accent is kind of fine and acceptable. It's more like this is the one way you should speak, and everything else you kind of get laughed at
well,
unless you're
I
with
think that
a group
happens
of people who
though
have the
in
same
the
accent.
United States.
So when I'm here, I have to.
But yeah, like I feel like a southern
Do you?
accent usually is made fun of anywhere but the South as being like slow. Like it denotes some kind of like lack of intelligence stereotypically in anywhere else but the South.
Yeah. But would someone from the South who would, I don't know, move to Boston or something be
I mean, if they
expected to
want to
swap
not
to the
be
Bostonian
seen
accent
as,
or?
a certain type of person, yeah.
Okay, wow. Well, in Germany, it's literally like when you're like on
Hmm.
TV, radio, anything, you're supposed to speak accent free. So yeah, it's a bit stupid sometimes. But then there's legit people when I fall back into my accent here that just won't understand me. They're just like, yeah, I don't understand what you've just said. I'm just like, that wasn't that
I
different
mean,
to,
I come from an
you know.
island where we
But
have like
anyways,
regional words that mean different things in certain parts of the island, and we all like have like these
yeah,
outright wars about like, no, it's pastelillo. No, it's empanadilla. Oh my god, you're wrong. Oh my god, no, I'm right. And I'm like, guys, guys. It's 100 miles by 35 miles of island. Can't we not just get along? No, and the answer is no. I also am very familiar with stereotypes because, of course, I have the fiery Latina stereotype. And I often find that in work situations
oh yeah,
specifically, people keep testing me to see if it comes out. As a Latina, I'm pretty even tempered, I should say.
yeah,
But so they can't quite believe that I'm this person. And a lot of them haven't even met a lot of Puerto Ricans before. They've met like other Latino people, but not necessarily like Puerto Ricans. So they keep like prodding me and saying things. And I'm like, you're testing me right now, and I'm not going to give you the satisfaction. So I just like take a deep breath, even though sometimes it really gets close to home. And I'll just take a deep breath and like smile in their face, like, you MFer.
yeah. Yeah, it feels a bit like in the first Avengers where Tony tries to get the Hulk
Yep,
to
yep,
Hulk
yep.
out, and she's like,
So,
"No, no, nothing."
so
Oh, but
yes, yes,
really, you
that
shouldn't
is a
do it.
perfect
Why would you
analogy.
do
I am Mark
that?
Ruffalo, correct? Uh, and my secret is that I'm always angry. Yes.
Ah,
Well, you know
see, my
what? I
secret
love
is that
it.
I'm always
We're
tired.
perfect. Most recently, as I've, you start at a certain level in your career, and like then you kind of start like climbing the ladder if if you're ambitious and hardworking, or I'm also like not afraid to
Yeah,
put in 80 hours a week. So all these things combined help me. But the higher I think I get, the more pronounced these like testing scenarios become. And I'm just like, this is just a test. This is just a test. And if I tell myself it's a test and it's not meant to be malicious necessarily, then I can kind of control myself much easier than if I was like, did they just really say that? you know?
yeah. I
Hmm.
used to have a boss who would constantly try to get a rise out of me. And at the beginning, because I was like 19, he was obviously successful because I was 19 and like
What? You didn't
green
know
behind
everything
my
at
ears and
19?
didn't
I
know shit.
surely did.
Um, but It was my first job, and I was like,
Oh,
wait, so school
yeah,
didn't
oh,
prepare me for the real work?
this could be
That is
another
interesting.
episode of Politics.
So he tried to like constantly do it, but like as I grew older, and then obviously I did my uni degree on the side of it, and like you just kind of meet other people, and you just kind of like in contact with like more grown up people. I recognized what he was doing, and I was just like, yeah, it's not happening. And I just like internally laughed at myself because I could see how he was like getting frustrated because I was not like taking the bait, and that really made it fun for
Yeah,
me. So I was like, yeah, not happening.
yeah, I feel
Remain to be
like
the
as
stupid
long as
person.
they can't see that my ears are turning red.
But like for me, it was also those like the expectation I kind of had from school that like grown-ups weren't that
Yes,
way, that
yes.
they would treat you better. And then you like meet like grown-ups and they're your superiors and everything, and you'd be like, wow, that's
Oh,
so
I know.
childish. How did you get so far in life? And that guy, on top of that, kind of because we were like kind of
Hmm, hmm.
related, but like he was my mom's cousin, so like not directly related. But so obviously he knew my family as well. And he like every now and then he'd be like, yeah, your mom did a really terrible job at raising
Why
you. And I was like,
don't why don't
what?
you go and tell her to her
I'm
face?
what? Yeah, first of all. Second of all, he was gay, he didn't have children. Like, what? You can't, like, tell other people how to
Well,
raise their children if you
non-parents should
haven't
not be
raised
able
any
to like
child.
judge parents, honestly.
Yeah. And he was the
Well,
one being
sometimes
childish,
people
so I was just
take
like,
things
"You're so
out on
ridiculous."
others that are about themselves, and that's the other way that I can just like be like, "Oh, it's about you. It's not about me. Cool. It's so sad to be you." Oh, this has
Yeah.
been great, and we could talk about
Oh,
politics later
man.
on too. But let's before we get into our chapter today, we are doing Order of the Phoenix chapter 3, and that is called the Advanced Guard. But before we get to that, a quick thing for everyone out there: support this podcast on patreon.com/Akiopolitics. You can get a monthly sticker and recipe, or just, early release of episodes and videos by yours truly, just, ranting about the state of the world. And that is like starts at $2 a month. So, I mean, why wouldn't you do that? All right. And then another thing we're asking for is for everyone to tell us how Harry Potter has affected your politics. So you can leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699. You can email us an MP3 of your lovely voice at info@Akiopolitics, or write us an email, honestly, or tweet at us at Akiopolitics.
Do you think we can skip the introduction part
I
because
mean,
we've
no,
talked
but
for half an
let's
hour about
get
other
some
stuff?
stats though, because our listeners need to know you. Like, when was the first time you read Harry Potter, and like, how did you get into this?
The first time I read it, I was 9 years old, and it was kind of a not straight path to Harry Potter. My dad, for some reason, had the first book because someone gifted it to him, which I don't know why, but someone gifted my dad a children's book. Um,
Poor
and
dad.
he had read it, but he didn't enjoy it. And he just kind of put it put it on the shelf and just like never mentioned it. But then this friend who had given him the first book also came with like the audiobooks for the third book, and I somehow ended up having them. So I've listened to the third book and I was like, this sounds like something has happened before this like adventure. And I was like talking to my dad. I was like, "Do you know if there's like more books in the series?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think I have the first one." And then he just stuck it out of the bookshelf. And he's
Oh,
like, "Here, I didn't enjoy it." So that's how I went to read the first Harry Potter book after already knowing the third
so
book and what happens in the third
so
book.
the entire time you're reading the first
But I
book, you're
was
like, "That's Scabbers."
so my first like I've read all the books in German first, but I've now read them all in English, and I don't even own German copies anymore because everything I do Harry Potter is in English anyways, which is like one of the few times people come up to me like, "Have you heard the news about that?" I'm just like, "Bitch, please, of course. I work for MuggleNet." And it's usually like months after stuff happened. I was
I'm
like,
sorry.
yeah, that's
You're
not
very
news.
uncool right now,
But
person who just came up to me with this hot goss.
yeah. And like, it'd be like how you can imagine it. People be like, so I've heard there's this 8 book coming out. I was like, it's a play, but carry on.
Not to be this person. Well, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm terrible like that. That's why probably people don't come to me anymore with Harry Potter stuff,
You know
because they know
what?
I'm
Maybe
just
they
gonna laugh
deserve
at their
it.
faces.
That's my hot take. So, what house are you? So this is the Double
I'm a
Gryffindor
Gryffindor.
podcast right
I think
now,
you are too.
and I think this is why we spent half an hour talking
Yeah.
about ourselves.
Yep.
Sounds about right.
That's how that works.
And what's your Patronus?
I
I
have a
love
Weasley
it.
Patronus,
Actually,
like
I
Arthur
checked the
Weasley, which I
I,
found
I
very
did a
cool.
new account, and it turns out my Patronus is I think it's a type of dog, right? So I was like, you know what, like close enough, because I always say my Chihuahua Emmy is my Patronus because she's small but fierce. So you know what, I'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, that's an accurate
Small,
description of a Weasley
and this
too.
is why we're
Small but
Gryffindors.
fierce.
And your favorite book in the entire series?
I mean, that's why I'm here,
Awesome,
isn't it? It's
awesome,
Order of the
yes.
Phoenix. And it is because it is the book that starts the
I know,
politics
I'm
stuff, and
so
it is
excited
so
because this
loaded
is
with
what, like,
politics. I
I've
just
been
love it.
waiting for this since we started the podcast.
Yeah, I can imagine, because now there's all
But
the big
even
topics
then,
coming
like
up.
books 1 through 4 do have very specific politics, especially like Prisoner of Azkaban is all about the prison system, like um
What, do you think Dementors aren't a good way to guard a
have you ever
prison?
seen The Office when Prison Mike is like the Dementors were awful? That's how I feel.
Huh.
And then your favorite movie?
That is really hard for me
Yes,
because
yes.
honestly, I
I
kind of hate
understand
them
that
all.
sentiment.
Especially like, yeah, especially like if someone's like, so what's your favorite? I'm just like, oh, that one is bad because of that. On that one, I didn't like that one. And then it's like, everyone, like every movie is ruled out. And it's like, okay, damn.
Okay.
But I really like Deathly Hallows, the first one, because
Oh
it's the
yeah,
one that's
yeah. I
closest to
get
the
it. I
books
get it.
in a way. Even though
Oh, the
it's
one where
camping
they
in the
camp
woods for a
around a
long
lot.
time,
Cool, cool,
but
cool.
sure. I grew up with Harry Potter in the same way. So, like, as I was like 9, 10, 11, I was like, Dumbledore is here to save us all. He can do everything. And then, like, by book 5, you'll be like, maybe Dumbledore has some flaws too. Maybe he's not the savior for all scenarios all the time. But I still kind of ended up really liking him because he is the kind of like chess master, because he's steps ahead of all of them. And also, without Dumbledore, Harry would not do anything. Let's be real.
Like Dumbledore, like every character is problematic to me, and that's what makes him like a well-rounded character, right?
Yeah.
Because a person can have flaws and still be worthwhile or like worth knowing. And Dumbledore is one of those people. I just have
Yeah.
sometimes a really hard time believing, like, was there no other way than just to live with the Dursleys,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can argue, and I see those arguments. But uh, I think what makes Dumbledore more redeemable than other characters for me is that he's definitely lived in regret of a lot of like the
Oh
things
yeah,
that
for
he did
sure.
that weren't really cool, like the Ariana stuff. I think, and he's ultimately like strives to do the good in the world after realizing that he can't be trusted with like
I
might and
mean,
power and
and
stuff.
I think that's also very admirable to know your flaws and keep going despite them, because I feel like taking it back to politics, like we have a lot of politicians in the United States who have very visible flaws, and I'm pretty sure they know about all their flaws, but they're just like, well, it's too late for me to change now. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think the fun part about Dumbledore, especially in the first couple of books, when he's still kind of like the more like sainty person, all above everyone else,
Mhm.
is that he's kind of the quirkiness, like his kind of random stuff that he tells people, and everyone's like, I don't understand a word he says, but sure, he's like the most intelligent person on the planet. That was probably really great that he said, even though I
Well,
didn't
it's
understand
funny
a word.
that I think we see Dumbledore, especially like through Harry's eyes, right? So we get to see like those stages of us with powerful figures or figures of authority where we idolize them or vilify them because that's very black or white, and then we get a more nuanced understanding of them as Harry
Yeah,
grows up.
yeah, which is
Oh yeah, for
similar
sure.
as to
Like
every child growing up. You think there's like only good and evil, and then you
I
realize,
mean,
okay,
unless
the
we're
world
talking
is
about
much
Donald
more
Trump,
complex
and
than
then
that.
it's like super, but it's like dumb evil, like it's not, it's not like
Yeah,
Machiavellian. It's just so dumb.
I mean, it was a
I
perfect
mean,
phone
that
call.
memo did
What you
not
gonna
say
say?
anything about quid pro quo.
It might have said anything about quid and
I
quo, but there
mean,
was no
what
pro.
are you talking about? It didn't say those words, so clearly there was no quid pro quo, you know?
Oh man. Like for me it's obviously much more fun because I can kind of sit over here and be like,
I
damn,
mean,
your president is really
yes. I
stupid.
mean, I understand
But
that.
then
I feel that, but I also am like, I still live here.
yeah. And also like I can obviously do that a bit more relaxed, but that guy still has the new codes. He can like decide to not like Germany one day and be like,
I mean, I guess it
yeah,
depends what
let's
Vladimir
nuke
Putin
Germany.
tells him, you know?
That is true. I mean, I suppose Germany is too close to
Well,
Russia in that case, so.
small miracles. Cool. Any fun facts about you that you'd like to share with us, other than you're in Germany and you're probably okay?
Well, yeah, I think a couple of them I've already mentioned. I'm a MuggleNet staffer. I do stuff for MuggleNet, which is I do a lot of different stuff, which the majority is
You're
behind the scenes.
hardworking,
So
and we love you.
I'll just thank you. And I do another podcast, which I'm assuming some of your listeners will know me as well, which is Speak Beastie, which your co-host
I
Juliana
mean,
also
I
does
wanted
with
to
me.
speak Beastie
So
like that. I'm just angling for
if
an invite at this point.
Oh, okay. I'll forward that to the right people. So yeah, we do Fantastic Beasts, as the name would suggest. So we cover everything about Fantastic Beasts, and that's gonna take us another, I don't know how many years, depending on how many films are gonna be delayed. um, but yeah, it's really fun. We talk about magical beasts and Johnny Depp a
Well,
lot, which is
I'd
less
like to
fun,
say
but
this, interject this. My husband is a reluctant Harry Potter reader, and by which that he has been a, a guest host on Akia Politics like 3 or 4 times.
listen to the
And he's
most recent
only
one
read
where
the
he was guesting.
chapters that he has been the guest host on. So he's watched the movies. Like after we got
Ah,
married, I was like, if you're not gonna read the books, you're gonna watch all the movies with me. So we did a long weekend of watching movies. I think it was a Labor Day weekend. And he was like, fine. And then he had like a lot of questions. I'm like, this is what happens when you don't read the books. Um, and so I'm working on
exactly.
him, and like I think the biggest scam that I'm gonna do is maybe have children so that he will have to read to them. Like that's like the
That is
scam
a
that I'm
long
gonna
play.
run. Like it's like I was very like wavering on the idea of children or not, but maybe this is the way to go. Um,
So why did you have
I mean,
children? So my husband has to read
out of
Harry Potter. Oh,
dedication
solid
to
motivation.
Joanne Kathleen Rowling, like so that might be the thing.
Oh man.
But he
Um,
does love,
yeah.
absolutely adore the Fantastic Beasts film.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think, I mean, it's obviously targeted more to adults and it's a lot
And you could
darker.
come in without really
So
reading the series.
it might
Exactly.
actually be
So
better
like
if you don't know the
he's just
series, to be
like
honest.
and also like I mean the period in time and like the fashion is also very much something that appeals to him. He's also a history major, like that was his first degree. And so he's just like, oh yes, this really appeals to me, and like the way this is done is pretty good in the way of like intertwining like this magical mythology in like New York City and abroad, uh, and kind of like showing like like
Yeah.
magical flappers and magical underground, you know, prohibition era bars. um, so he's like really into that. And I was just like, who would have thought that you'd be into this?
I mean, it kind of makes sense because, like, costume design, set design, production design, all those things, always the one things that
Yes.
really win big for Harry Potter Fantastic
I
Beasts
feel like
because those are
actually
just
because it
excellent.
is set in the quote unquote real world and not just the school, it is actually more appealing to a larger
Yeah.
audience and they can do more with costume design and set design.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that is probably why it's so hard sometimes to pitch it to adults, Harry Potter, because you're like, yeah, well, it's like you follow a schoolboy, and
Yeah,
they'd be
and
like,
that's probably
yeah,
what
I'm
your
too
dad
old for
thought too, you know?
that. But I mean, both my parents are just like,
No, maybe my
nope.
scam won't work.
But then there's actually, but then there's actually those like deep topics in Harry Potter, but that like those only really come through if you
Yeah, that's
stick
true.
around for longer than the
So,
first book.
I don't know. I think that so he's like really into Fantastic Beasts, and I'm just like, well, at least we can find some common ground. Fantastic Beasts, I enjoy. Not so much the casting of Johnny Depp, but
Same.
problematic for sure. But I do enjoy the casting of Jude Law as young Dumbledore.
Oh yes, I think like my main offense with Johnny Depp, and that was before the whole whatever scandal or not scandal happened, is that Grindelwald is definitely like a German or
Hmm.
like a German speaker character, and I would have preferred if they
Yes,
cast a
I
German
agree.
actor for it.
And I know, like, but I was just like, even if you didn't want to go like the German route and you just wanted to go with like someone who is like Aryan looking, like the ideal of the Aryan whatever, because that's what it's supposed to be. Like an Alexander Skarsgård
Yeah.
would have been perfect for that, even though he's a Swede, I think.
And then it's like also like Johnny Depp does always kind of do the same character, and the way I looked at Grindelwald from what we had in
Yeah,
Deathly Hallows,
exactly.
it wasn't Johnny Depp. So I was like, couldn't we like
Well,
get
I
any
mean,
other
have
actor,
you
please? And we do have actors in Germany.
I
Like it's not like we
I'm
don't have
not saying
acting
that I'm a
here.
casting expert, but have you seen Big Little Lies? So Alexander Skarsgård plays this
Nope.
like abusive but charming but evil kind of person that has depth. You know, like he's very charming, he's loving one time, and then
Yeah.
very abusive and violent in the other, and he's like a monstrous character just like in the book. I love those books by Leanne Moriarty, any book by Leanne Moriarty really. But so in that series he shows this absolute range of like control, and I was like, Grindelwald would have been like a really good character for him to play because he just shows that like charming one moment and then like super, you know, super monstrous the next.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that is a genuine problem for me, just as like being a German.
Yeah.
Grindelwald obviously is the wizard Hitler. And like, if you look back at tapes of Hitler, he's not like openly a bad guy or anything. He's actually a guy that is
Hmm.
very reasonable in a way. Like, you can listen to him and be like, okay, I see why
Yeah,
people
because there's a
followed
certain
him.
charm.
I see his points. He was
Yeah.
not. He was charming. He said the right things, but he was not like evil,
No.
laughing out loud and be like, "Haha, we kill all these people." He was not at that at all. But I get that they have to kind of do that in the films because people otherwise will not understand it. They've even like David Yates has said they've changed a couple of scenes in the second film because Grindelwald was too likable, and me as
But
a
that's
German
the
being like,
point, and I
but that is
feel
kind of the point.
oh my god, we
That
can
is
get
the
into this
point.
so hard because we've talked about this before, but I feel like what Fantastic Beasts brought to the series that the Harry Potter books did not is the that nuance of even people with terrible ideas can sound reasonable and be charming and win you over. And
Yeah,
that's the real danger. It's not someone being outwardly
yeah,
evil like Voldemort, who is like the least charming cult leader ever. But
yeah,
but the real danger isn't the person telling you outright, "I'm evil and I'm doing this," and their followers. The real evil is the person who you kind of agree with because there's always a kernel of truth in there, and they're charming enough to make you believe the opposite end.
and I mean, it's a general kind of movement, I think, in the film industry. Like looking back at all the films, you always kind of have this
No, yeah.
cartoonishly evil people. But nowadays, we have more and more people that like you don't recognize from the
Well,
get
and I
go.
think
Okay,
it's
that's the
also
evil
a
guy.
disservice that's done
Like,
to us by even rom coms or any other um, film medium or art medium in which we romanticize like this idea of toxic masculinity. It's like, oh, he like did this to the protagonist but out of love also, and I'm just like, no, that's an abusive relationship. And for someone who was in an emotionally abusive
yep,
relationship with someone who tried to control me and told me what to do and like all these other things where he was kind of diminishing my worth as a person without me noticing, I'm like, this is why I didn't realize I was in an abusive relationship, because in yeah, in the terms of like film
it's so
industry or
normalized.
like even romance novels or whatever that I had consumed up to like the mid 2000s where this was very prevalent because that was like their rom-com renaissance, you know, that was coded as like an
Yeah,
idealized romantic gesture or whatnot. And then later on, I was like, oh, I spent 6 years with someone who was emotionally abusive and I didn't understand what that meant. I thought that was love.
yeah. Which it must be tough. I mean, I can 100% not relate to that at
I
all.
mean, it is what
But
it is. I mean, I've learned a lot from it. I don't necessarily regret. I mean, obviously, I regret that I had to go through what I went through, but I also, in a way, don't, because then it makes me super grateful to have the things I have, and then everything teaches you something. But
yeah, I think that's the only way to like move
yeah,
forward from anything, to be like not damning that, but taking the learnings from
yeah,
it,
you can't.
because you can't
So
change the
then,
past. So if you just like wallow in misery about what you did in the
so then
past, you're
speaking
not gonna
about
move
like a
forward.
Grindelwald or someone who maybe if we would benefit if he wasn't if he was likable in the movies, then we could start noticing people in our lives and also people in power who are likable, right? But then have like very nefarious intents, and we
Yeah,
could kind of see through that.
exactly. And I think that is probably, an issue of how Rowling's writing doesn't
Oh,
necessarily
of course.
translate perfectly to screen. Because if she'd written a book series again, it would have been so much richer, and it'd be so much more learning in it for people who still
Well,
need
and I
to
think
kind of
also
learn
her
that.
writing style has matured because by the time she wrote like the Casual Vacancy and like the Comrade Strike books, you can see a more nuanced approach to evil.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, oh God, this has become not at all about Order of the Phoenix. All right, so I'm going to close with this question for listeners. How has Harry Potter affected your politics? You can let us know at 915-996-1699. And you can email us a voicemail at info@accupolitics.com also, or at Accupolitics on all the socials, because that was also available, which is pretty great. And you can support us on patreon.com/Accupolitics for as little as
Yeah.
$2 a month. And I look forward to getting a voicemail from you or a voice memo on our email on how Harry Potter has affected your politics. Aurelia, did I do it? Did I do it? Yes. I always
Yeah, you
mispronounce
did.
everyone's name, so I feel this is a personal victory. I'm taking it, okay?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
it's
giving
been
it
a
out to
wild
you.
ride. Thank you for joining us. But until next week, where we will be discussing politics of something in chapter 4 on Order of the Phoenix, join us then. And until then, politics managed.